Hey, what up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you tonight. I was able to watch the new edition of Monday Night Wars. I have no idea what this episode was called, but it was based on Sting and The Undertaker. Um, Honestly, when this first came out, I thought that it was a little weird. But two guys that gained a lot of respect in WWE and WCW. They sort of get the combined effort. We've seen Mick Foley, we've seen Chris Jericho get their own episodes, and DX and the NWO got linked in together. They had the one that I just watched the other day on the celebrities. And for a guy like Sting, that was a big part of WCW. Whether if it was him being the franchise player throughout the early 90s, or the guy who stepped up to the plate that really had the shot to beat the NWO, or a guy like The Undertaker, as Vince McMahon put it, one of the most loyal guys in all of WWE, a guy that, basically got his shot in 1990 to come over from WCW and join up into the WWF at the time, becoming out and being the surprised tag team partner of the Ted DiBiase at the 1990 Survivor Series, where he would debut, coming out with Paul Bear. No, I apologize. His first manager was Brother Love, and then that was later replaced by Paul Bear to add a little bit more of a deathly image. They show Undertaker walking out to the ring the first time, and just, this is the guy that came in with no fanfare, no big nets, as sort of like that was the way that they pumped up guys coming into the company. Was they would watch Undertaker building caskets, or maybe they would have Paul Bear talking about this guy, but instead it was just a cold, dead opening. This guy walking down to the ring, and fans were just in terror of this guy. And as you got to learn more about this character as time went on, he just became more and more eerie and scary. A funny story about going to a house show when I was a kid. One of my friends, Sean Surtzer, a guy that I met up with in my WrestleMania 26 video, and I drove down to Phoenix. He lives down there now these days. Basically, he what am I trying to say? Well, basically, he was at a house show that I was at, and being school friends, I went over and I talked to him during intermission. And as I was walking away from him, telling goodbye, that I would see him at school tomorrow, and we would definitely talk about what happened at the last part of the show. He told me, "Don't forget that when Undertaker comes out, the lights are gonna go out, and not to be scared." I didn't want to tell Sean, but I wasn't going to be scared. But I don't know. When they played up Sting at the very beginning, they showed that this guy was the franchise guy. He was sort of handpicked by Ric Flair to sort of be that opponent that was going to beat him and sort of become the next guy to take them to the next level. They talked about, basically the Clash of the Champions match, which is the first match that's featured on the Clash of the Champions DVD. I haven't picked up the Sting DVD, but my guess if they have the best of Sting on this WWE release that just came out. It would have to be in there. I mean, it's one of the biggest matches that he's ever been in that really stands out in my mind. The NWA standing up in their quest to try and take a little bit away from the WWF pay-per-view that day with the free show on TBS, and him trying to step up to the plate and really become the franchise guy. They sort of showed that WCW mismanaged Sting a little bit, that every time this guy took a step forward, they knocked him 2 steps back by basically making him step up to be the franchise player. At that point, he got a little bit of a break by Ric Flair walking away from WCW and joining up with WWF during the time when Ric Flair was not getting along with management, and Sting picked up from there. But the second that basically Vince McMahon was done with Ric Flair and Ric Flair came back to WCW, he was put right back into the limelight, and Ric Flair was the man again up on top, and Sting sort of floated to the background again. And then as time sort of progressed and Sting started to move forward a little bit, then WCW opened up their pocketbooks and they started bringing in the guys like Hulk Hogan, the Macho Man, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash. They're bringing in the NWO guys, and basically it was Sting that stood up to the plate and called out Hall and Nash when they were running with the Outsiders, basically saying that this was the WCW. This was the place that he built, and he wasn't going to let these guys push him around. Funny story is that going into the minutes before the Bash at the Beach show where Hulk Hogan turned and joined the NWO, the backup plan was if this wasn't going to go down, that Sting was going to be the surprise guy to go in there. To me, in my mind, I think the NWO would have been a big deal. There was a whole lot of people following behind Hall and Nash. There was people like me who really thought that they were coming there from WWF to start a war and take over this company for Vince, and that's why Eric Bischoff came up with this great idea, and it really did work because people were buying into it, that these WWF guys were coming down there, like Vince McMahon was sending them down there to just basically kill off this company, so that way there would only be one company, and WWF would have the rule of the roost, being the only wrestling company in the United States. It made a whole lot of sense. But basically, I think it would have been just another WCW angle if it would have been Sting going out there. It would have been one of the first times that Sting turned heel in WCW, so it sort of would have been a big deal. But I think after a couple weeks, or maybe even a couple months at the best, it sort of would have played itself out. Sting having enough basically with the backstabbing of the NWO, where the NWO tricked even Lex Luger and the other heads of WCW, thinking that Sting had turned and attacked them, and basically with Lex Luger being Sting's best friend, him thinking that he betrayed him was enough that basically Sting became a free agent, where he fell out of WCW. He wasn't in the NWO, but he started showing up, just sitting up in the rafters, just watching what the NWO was doing, sort of plotting for the right time to come down. And basically, by not saying a word for over a year, by showing up every once in a while, and becoming a part of the action, becoming something that people really wanted to see. What if Sting really did have a match? What if Sting really did confront the NWO? What if Sting really did become the franchise player for WCW once again? They led up to one of the biggest pay-per-views in WCW history, Starrcade 1997, Sting versus Hogan. You can go and you can watch that pay-per-view, that match, with everything from I guess he wasn't the heel referee at the time, but Nick Patrick and his fast count. That followed out by Bret Hart coming down, which made no sense at all in his debut. He was already the guest referee of one match earlier in the night. Now here he comes out there basically saying that he's not going to let some screw job finish, end out of the pay-per-view, and kill off somebody else's career. Sort of playing off what happened to him at Survivor Series. And him, being kicked out of WWF, basically, and then just weeks after that, basically, Bret Hart hands the title to Sting, and then weeks later is joining the NWO, which makes no sense at all. From there, Sting joining the Wolfpack, to me, was one of those things that just put Sting in a place where he didn't really matter anymore. Kevin Nash was the leader. Lex Luger was in there. Lex Luger was another guy. Conan, the Macho Man. They were sort of guys that maybe if they had their own faction off to the side of behind, not being behind Hulk Hogan anymore, it would sort of elevate them. But at the same time, it was all about Kevin Nash, who was one of the hottest guys in wrestling. A lot of people really liked Nash. I was a huge Nash fan. But, the other guys sort of were the second fiddle. It didn't really make sense how, these guys had to be their own group. But they sort of played it off by Luger and Sting joining the NWO, but it was the Wolfpack who still cared about the tradition of WCW, and they weren't trying to kill it. They were trying to elevate it. Why didn't they just go under the WCW banner then? It was always, WCW versus the NWO versus NWO Black and White, and they were always trying to fight those guys against each other. And even though, there was babyface group against babyface group, and then there was the heel group, both of them were trying to, solve the same mission of taking these guys out. But I think they thought that they had to elevate them off of Team WCW, or they were going to be linked in with all of the luchadors and everybody else who didn't really matter. But it sort of put Sting on this island of just matches for the next foreseeable future. Sting stayed loyal to WCW until his dying day. With the company going down, when TBS and TNT said that there's no longer going to be any wrestling on the station. They canceled them. That basically killed off the deal for Eric Bischoff to buy WCW, which basically packed it up and sent it to Vince McMahon, who could keep it under wraps until bringing it back for the Invasion storyline, and then bringing back all of the old footage for us to watch on old DVDs and now the WWE Network. He later would go on to TNA, but to me, honestly, this 1 hour long show Was it an hour? I think it says an hour up there, but and most of the other ones have been that long. This was basically a commercial for me wanting to see Taker versus Sting. The way that they compared these guys up so much, basically saying that both of these guys were still loyal to their company. Undertaker, to me, through the Attitude Era, he had some big matches against Stone Cold Steve Austin. He had the Hell in the Cell match against Shawn Michaels. He had the feud against Kane at WrestleMania. He had the corporate ministry, which was something to me that really didn't matter in the long run. It just sort of was there. It had a few cool moments, but honestly, to me, as the guy in the Attitude Era, a lot of people say that he doesn't get the respect that he deserves, but to me, honestly, he never was a really guy that was a really big favorite of mine. I know that he had some big matches with Austin. I know that he took the title from Austin. He was a champion sometimes along the way, but he always sort of seemed to be that, I don't want to call him the jobber of the stars, but in the Attitude Era, I mean, like, he never really was the franchise guy. It was always about Austin. It was always about McMahon. Guys like Foley and The Rock, maybe even Triple H at sometimes even seemed like they mattered more than the Undertaker did. But there was times where they elevated up they elevated Undertaker up, much like they elevate Mark Henry every once in a while, or they elevate the Big Show today to make him seem like he was a really big deal. But I don't know. The one match that a lot of people have really been wanting since 1997 was Undertaker versus Sting. And like I said earlier, was something that really made me want to watch this match even more. We were really hoping to get this at WrestleMania 28. WrestleMania 30 was a rumor. And now here we are going to WrestleMania 31, and it looks like this match isn't going to happen. When you listened to the Vince McMahon podcast, when he talked about The Undertaker and losing the streak at WrestleMania 30, to Brock Lesnar, Undertaker was referred to so many times as if he was sort of like in the past. I know that Vince McMahon said that it was more than likely that Sting was going to pop up at WrestleMania was the next time that we were going to see this guy, or not the next time, but at least the time we would see this wrestle. That basically Sting is a guy that the less you see this guy, the more it is to make you sort of want to see him. It sort of is easier to build the story that way due to they were talking about Brock Lesnar and due to contracts and due to just what they think fans want, which was the thing a lot of people were really mixed up on. That you don't really want to have Christmas every day, is what they were saying about Brock Lesnar appearances and why you don't get to see him all the time. But honestly, like I in my book, I don't think of Brock Lesnar as any more of a star than John Cena is. I think that John Cena might even be a bigger star. Maybe John Cena doesn't have the appeal to sort of UFC fans that Brock Lesnar has, that because he was the champion for the company, and he was like a figurehead. He was on the cover of the video game and things like that. But this was a great episode. Honestly, it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Probably one of the reasons why they paired these guys up into a dual episode was to show that synergy between these guys, of how loyal both of these guys were and how they were both sort of leaders of the locker room that people could fall behind. But I don't know. I want to see that match so bad right now, and it was probably really good that they put them together in the same episode, seeing how they have Undertaker interviews, but they were very few and far and in between, talking about the past. And then, of course, Sting has never signed with TNA. I'm sorry, Sting has never signed with WWE. So they don't have a lot of footage of him talking about his career. Hopefully one day they'll be able to lock that down. I know it was really big news when he did the Ultimate Warrior tribute, where he told the story basically about Ultimate Warrior eating the tuna fish and orange juice in one, making this sort of a smoothie out of it, I guess you can say, where he got his protein and he got his vitamin C all in the same thing, which was kind of gross, but I guess people have done worse. Every once in a while when your chocolate pudding falls into your spaghetti, if it's not a ton of it, it's not going to be that bad in my book. I don't even know how I figured that out, but I did. I think it was from Hot Lunches when I was a kid. But great episode. As always, this was like episode 14, I believe, so it looks like we have about 6 more of these. The Celebrities episode, I got the review up on that the other day when I went on a binge of watching WWE Network shows. I was late on that one because of the holiday, so if you weren't able to check that one out, it'll be in the description box below. But peace out, thank you guys, and see you guys down the road.